If you're a fan of Marie Kondo, you may ask yourself if your home sparks joy. If you're a fan of procrastination, you may ask yourself, how long can you ignore that pile of junk in your garage until it eats you alive? This is the 5 a.m. Miracle, episode number 391. Organize everything better. Spring Cleaning 2.0. Good morning, I am Jeff Sanders, and this is the podcast dedicated to dominating your day before breakfast. A few weeks ago, Tessa and I began to clean out our garage. Now, in our house, there is not a lot of storage space, so everything ultimately ends up in the garage. Now, there is a loft in the garage for extra long-term storage, which is nice, but really just lends itself to more junk being stored in more awkward places. And really, long-term, the name of the game is we absolutely have to give that space more attention and organize it with some really serious effort. So this week, I want to help you get your house in order, or your garage. In the case of our garage, it's kind of like our home's junk drawer. There's a lot of stuff there, but it needs to be worked through. So let's work through your stuff and your house. Let's organize everything better. It is springtime here in the U.S., and so spring cleaning is definitely in order. And I want to discuss what I'm calling the 5 a.m. Miracles 7 Rules of Home Organization, or really just 7 rules of how to work through your junk so that you can have a cleaner, more organized space to get your stuff done, to feel productive, and to really have a great place to live and work. We'll begin with number 1, which this rule is very simple. Just do one thing at a time, or more specifically, just work through one room at a time. Tess and I began with the garage because it's the most obnoxious space in our house in terms of needing attention. Now, you may do the opposite approach, which is to pick the easiest room to clean and organize. And if that's what it takes for you to build momentum and then move forward to the next room and the next, that's great. I like to take the approach of whatever annoys me the most is where I begin, but that can lead to procrastination if you just let the junk pile up. Either way, you're going to work through your stuff one space at a time, or one room at a time in your home or office. It's also great if you do just one room at a time, 1 week at a time. So this process does not have to happen in a weekend. You could clean or organize your entire house over the course of a few weeks or even a few months. Just take the process step by step and give your whole self to whatever it is you're doing next. I like to space out this work in part because when I give myself, let's say for example, 1 weekend to really do a deep dive into a space, I can get so much more value from that time because I'm not in a hurry. And so my garage is a good example of that, where it is complex. There are a lot of things to go through. And if I feel like I'm in a hurry, there's a pretty good chance I'm not going to do the deep dive that I need to do. And now that I look back on the work that we have done in that space in the last few weeks, I'm really happy with that effort. It's now a much better space to be in, much more organized, and I really feel that sense of sparking joy like Marie Kondo talks about. So when you do just one room at a time, you have the opportunity to really make that space something special. Rule number 2, I don't care what it is, just get rid of it. If you know me well, you know this podcast well, you know that I love to delete things. I love to cancel meetings, I love to free up time and space, and I'm a really big fan of just trashing the trash. In the case of home organization, yes, you want to throw things away, or recycle what you can, or donate what you can, or even reuse certain items in your own house in a better and more effective way. But the real name of the game here is to minimize what you own, or at least minimize the stuff that you have around you. Yes, you could just buy more storage space or organizational tactics and strategies and different materials to kind of have things in different bookshelves. You'll have that in your house, yes. But the fewer things you have to organize, the less of that stuff you'll also need, and the easier this process will be. So the very first step in all of this is just to minimize everything. I interviewed a guy named Joshua Becker a few years ago in the show, and he is an expert in minimalism, or really just living with less. And him and his wife actually downsized their home intentionally because they wanted to be able to have less to work with. Now, fortunately, my house is actually fairly small, and that was also done on purpose. I don't actually want to have a lot more stuff. I just want the space that I'm in to be a great space. And the less you have, the more joy you really will have from that space. And you can use filters to figure out kind of what to keep and what to get rid of. There's a great filter that I've used for years that comes from Greg McKeown's book, Essentialism, where he says, if it's not a clear yes, it's a clear no. This will be very handy for you as you begin to ask the question, do I keep this item? Is it useful? Is it valuable? Was it useful in the past but no longer will be in the future? Have I used this item in the last 1 or 2 years? These kinds of questions will allow you to really adjust what is necessary, what is important, what is valuable, and what just isn't for you any longer. I also use the filter, is it a 9 or a 10? No? Then walk away. Which really means on a scale of 1 to 10, if the items that I have in my life are not 9s and 10s, in other words, really phenomenal, really valuable, really amazing, then those items are going to find a better place, which is probably not in my existence, in my house, not with me anymore, because there really needs to be a focus on surrounding yourself with the best of the best. And that means being really picky, and it means letting go of the good to get to the great. So throwing things away or getting rid of things is really a process to establish what things you really value and only have those few things. And then all of a sudden, your spaces are more simplistic, but they're also a lot more valuable. Rule number 3, batching is best. As I went through my garage, one of the things I noticed right away was I had lots of similar items in different places. And so I just brought them all together. When you keep like items together, it's a lot more simplistic. You can organize things a lot better. You can label the box that things are in. And ultimately, it really just feels a lot more logical to have all these like items together. And then when you're looking for something, you know where to go because all of those things are in the same place. And when everything is together, you know what you have, you know what to keep, you know what to cut, and you have an inventory for later. So truly, batching in the sense of physical items is a great way to organize your space, have a place to go to get those same items, and it really is a good feeling to have everything together. That's one of the things I noticed right away as I clean my house is that it just feels natural and right to have a space that's organized intelligently and logically. And that's one of the things you miss when things are haphazard and they're messy. So really, the simplicity of a finished room that's organized well, it seems really nice, really only when you juxtapose that to what it used to be. So the messier your room was, the better you'll feel as it becomes more organized. If you're a naturally organized person, then this process won't be that cumbersome. But the more work you have to do, the better you're going to feel as you do it, which is why I love this process so much and why I lean on this on a daily basis, of course, for small things, but definitely on an annual basis for the really big stuff, to make sure that at least once a year, I do a deep dive into everything I own, everything I use, and ultimately surround myself with everything I love. Rule number 4 is to label every box every time. Labeling is awesome. As a guy who loves organization, I really love labeling. Labeling saves time, it reduces confusion, it prevents junk drawers and boxes full of random stuff. Labeling makes you feel really good inside, or at least it does for me. So label everything. This is such a big deal, especially as you do this over time. The more things that you label, the more things you want to label, and then the more organized you'll become because that's the system you've built. One of the best ways to not only organize your house, but keep it organized is to have great labels and follow the system. So as my garage is another example, I had a number of boxes that did not have labels and another set of boxes that had labels that were no longer appropriate, meaning that at one point or another, I had added more stuff to that box that didn't really belong there. And so being able to kind of sift through that stuff and move it around, batch like items together, and then relabel these boxes, All of a sudden, they make more logical sense, and I have a system now to ensure it stays that way. Logical, organized, and labeled. Now, this might sound like a real type A activity, and it definitely is, but I'll tell you that even if you're not that kind of person, you will appreciate this. This will save you time, save you confusion, and make your life a lot easier. And really the goal of all this is to do one big push like this one time, and the next year, when spring clean happens again, it will not be as hard. This will save you future time. Future spring cleanings will be simpler and easier and faster and better. So when you label, this process will not be that cumbersome, I promise. Rule number 5, open spaces spark joy. So your goal is to open more space as often as you can. The way that I focus on this is to push everything to the walls to open up space in the middle of the room. Ultimately, if you have just too much stuff and an open space is not really possible, that just to me says you have too much stuff. And to downsize, to delete, to get rid of stuff, to trash it, recycle it, donate it, reuse it, to find another place to put it, that gives you the chance to have less and therefore have more open space. The way that I now view the spaces that I'm in is I want to flow through them and have the stuff that's in that room kind of guide me through the room in a way that feels natural. As a counterexample, if you have to walk around things a lot, or it feels like a jungle gym in your house, or it's really just awkward to get through a space, there's a pretty good chance it's either organized poorly or there's just way too much stuff in the room to begin with. So open space is really powerful here to be able to feel comfortable in that space, to move through it fluidly and more efficiently, and really just to feel better about the space you're in because you're not overwhelmed by all the things that are there. So as you go through and eliminate things, then the next kind of component here is to reorganize what's left over in a way that's natural and fluid for you. Rule number 6, everything belongs somewhere. So in this podcast in the past, I've discussed the concept of equilibrium zero, which is my grouping of other zero activities like inbox zero, desktop zero, home base, or office zero. What all of that refers to is getting back to zero, or getting back to a place where everything is organized and put away. Now, the only way you'll ever be able to get to zero in any concept, whether it's in your digital inbox or physical space, is that you have predetermined where things go. So when they're out of place, you can put them back. So as an example with your email, if there are messages in your inbox, well, they should be read, responded to, deleted, filed away. So at the end of the day, you then have inbox zero because everything has been filtered. Well, that same thing is true with all of your stuff. Now, that does not mean you have to go through everything you own every single day. What it does mean is that everything belongs somewhere, and your goal is to get everything on a routine schedule back to where it belongs. So let's use my garage as another example. There's long-term storage in that place. So most of those items will go to a certain location and stay there for probably a year until the next holiday rolls around or next major activity. But most of the time it stays in that place. On a daily basis, there could be extra items out in my kitchen or living room. There's a lot of junk that can pile up in day-to-day living in those spaces. So at least once a day, I go through and put those things away. That would be living room zero or kitchen zero, where you're trying to find at least one time per day where everything gets put back away. Now, depending on how busy your family life is, that may sound like a daunting task, and I definitely hear you on that one. I have a 2-year-old daughter at home, and my house is much messier than it used to be, but I still hold that standard. I still hold that practice. Every single day, at least once a day, everything gets put away, which means I go to bed knowing that my house looks and feels clean and organized, which allows me to sleep better. It allows me to begin tomorrow a whole lot more level-headed because I know my house is in good shape. So your goal is to get everything where it belongs. Find that zero, define what that means, and put everything away, and then feel that sense of fulfillment. It really is nice. And finally, rule number 7, simplicity wins. This is a running message through this podcast, has been for years, and will continue to be for many years to come, because more is not better. Less is not bad. Stuff is really not that fulfilling. And downsizing is definitely not embarrassing. All of these things point to the same direction, which is that your goal is to live a more simplistic life that is more focused on fewer things that bring you more joy. If you've been in a pattern of buying things constantly, or saying yes to more activities more often, or making a longer to-do list more often, or just more all the time, I encourage you to take the exact opposite approach. Allow yourself the luxury of doing less, the luxury of being less busy, the luxury of living with less. Physical stuff, digital stuff, activity-wise, calendar-wise, life-wise, work-wise. Everything just a little less. You'll feel better. You'll breathe easier. You'll sleep better. You'll have more happiness. Like, it just works. Less is more. It really, really is. And for that action step this week, just pick one room and begin. Cleaning and organizing are always best completed in small sections, so just pick one to begin with. Odds are you can fully clean and organize one room each week and get through your whole house in a month or two. So keep it simple, start small, and get ready to love the work you've put in. You really will enjoy it. jeffsanders.com/391 is the place to go to get the episode notes, including links, transcriptions, and more. That's all I've got for you this week here on the 5 a.m. Miracle Podcast. Until next time, you have the power to change your life, and the fun begins bright and early.